Alright, what's going on, guys? Today we're doing the SQL injection box. This box is going to probably take a little bit longer, but it is the last one in one of the series for the Junior Pentesting path, so hopefully this one goes smooth. There are a lot of trial and error with SQL injection, with the validation, so this can take a really long time, but we're going to try and get through it quickly. And hopefully you guys learn something and understand the process. That's more important to me than you guys understanding SQL, because you can always learn SQL. You can't always learn the process if you don't know what you're doing here. So first thing, what does SQL stand for? And it says right there, structured query, query language. Okay. And what it is it's a language for databases. And here it's showing you there's relational and non-relational databases. So what we're going to talk about here today is relational. And what we're going to do, and you guys again can read through this. I'm going to go through this information quickly because of the fact that the practicals take a long time on this. So here's what it looks like as far as a diagram. You've got your database backend server, and then you've got it broken down into these databases. So there, let's say you have a shop or staff, accountants, whatever. Let's say you have a shop, and that's where people log into their accounts to pay for stuff. It keeps all their credit card data, that type of stuff. That's where username and passwords are going to be stored in for the login for the shop, if you're buying stuff, what products you have, that type of stuff. So when you go to log in, it's the way it's the SQL language is written. It's written in columns and rows. So this is what it would be. Let me make sure. Yeah, this is what it'd look like if you guys were to run SQL commands and get the actual information through the SQL database rather than on the website. So there would be username, and then this, whenever it's making a call to the website, let's say you log in, and you've seen a bunch of times where it'll say user ID, boom. This is what it's in relation to. It's actually relating to this. The nice thing about SQL, as far as websites and things like that go, is it doesn't actually validate the password. What it does is it says, here's Bob's username, is his password this, and if it equals yes, then it lets you in. That allows us to trick it because it doesn't actually take that password and validate that it's what you wrote down, even though that's kind of what it's doing. But I'll explain that a little bit more here. So let's see. So what is the acronym for the software that controls the database? And that's right here, Database Management System, DBMS. By the way, guys, we hit 100 subs, so I'm really pumped about that. I'm going to be doing a 100 subs video, and I'm pretty excited about it. I've already got it kind of written out. I just needed to do it. And then we're actually at 115 now, so hopefully we can keep this momentum going. What's the next one? What is the name of the grid-like structure which holds the data? And that's right here, tables. All right, and that's what it's saying. With the grid-like structure, you have columns and you have rows. So the big thing with this is you're trying to gather that information. You're trying to pull the information out. The difference between a command injection, SQL injection stuff is SQL's holding data, right? So you're just trying to gather data. Now you can use this to your advantage to log into things as well. So here, this is kind of some of the structuring of the language. This box is not meant to teach you SQL. So if you want to learn the language, go out there and learn it. This box is just going to kind of show you, once you know it, how to use it to gather information. So select, this is the query that's going to actually say, let's get some data, give me data. The asterisk is used as a wildcard just like anything else. And it's going to say, so select everything from users. Now with SQL, you always have to end your command with a semicolon. So once you do that, here's the information you're going to get. This is all the users, John, admin, Martin, and there's all their passwords. So then you're going to say select username, password from users, and that's only going to give you notice it doesn't give you the ID because you left out the asterisk. You didn't want everything. You only wanted the username and the passwords. Select asterisk from users, limit 1. That's going to show only one piece of information. Now, the reason I'm going through this real fast is because you guys can read this on your own. The practicals take a long time, and to learn SQL is beyond the scope of this box. You'll need to know a little bit of SQL to get through this by yourself, but it gives you enough information to get through it. So here we're looking at select, again, asterisk, so you want everything from users, where username equals admin. So it's only showing the admin. Let's see, we can skip through some of these because some of these are pretty easy. Here's one that we're going to be using a lot. So select wildcard from users where the username is like, so it just has to contain it basically. And it says A and percent. So if it has a letter and then a percent sign, that percent sign is now the wildcard. So it's saying anything that starts with A with anything after it. So admin, if that makes sense to you guys. So if you see a percent sign, like this one says percent and then in, so it has to end in an in, but anything can be before it. So you have John, admin, Martin, because they all end in, if that makes sense to you guys. All right, so now we're going to select from users where username is like, and you see percent mi percent. That means it has to have m and I right next to each other like that, but anything can be before it and anything can be after it. So there we have admin. So that's just kind of some of the basic stuff. Now what they're going to show you is the union statement, what this does, and this is important for what we're going to do because we're going to be grabbing information from other databases basically, or other tables if you will. And what it does is this union will allow you to grab multiple pieces of information. So with SQL injection, the way it works is, let's say this site right here is gathering, you can see the SQL query is select from article where ID equals 1 because here's the ID. So the backend server's sending a SQL query right here to the SQL server and saying, give me the article where the ID equals 1. Give me that information, right? So if we do a union on that, what that does is it actually is saying, okay, give me this table and this information. So give them both to me. That's what a union does. So a union is kind of almost like an and statement in a script or something. So this allows us to basically tell it, hey, run your command, right? The command that you want to do, but also we want this. So that's how we're going to start pulling information. So this is just showing you how a union works. So here they're saying select name, address, city, post, and from the customers table, and then union, and then select the company address, city, post from suppliers. And you can see there's companies in here and names. So that's what it did. It put them all and aggregated all the information. So this is just basic SQL. Insert, it'll allow you to add rows to a table. Update allows you to update already existing. Delete, obviously. So what SQL statement is used to retrieve data? That is our select statement. What SQL clause can be used to retrieve data from multiple tables? And that would be our union. And what SQL statement is used to add data? So this would be our insert. All right. So what is SQL injection? Similar to our command injection, to all of our injections, really. Basically, it's using the SQL language, whereas command injections was using PHP, I believe was the example we used. So it's using the SQL language and using it to exploit it, basically, and inject your own SQL code to do what you want. That's all injection really means, is that you're injecting your code into it. And depending on the language, this is what it can be. So, sorry guys, my throat is really bad from this weekend. I don't know why. All right, so what does it look like? So this is the first box we're going to do. So it's showing us here, it's pretty much the same thing. Blog ID equals 1. So this is the actual the actual SQL query that it's sending on the back end. You're not going to physically see this, right? If you just go to the website. But if you understand how SQL works, you know this is what it's doing. Now, you notice it says and private equals 0. So what that means is it's going to check, it's starting to check if the private, so 0 or 1 is a Boolean factor, and basically that's saying yes or no, it's private or it's not. So if it's private, it's not going to show it. So if this says and private equals 0, it's only going to show things that have the label private equals 0, which means it's not private, right? So we want to get rid of that. We want to see the private ones. So what we can do is we can say right here where it says blog ID equals 1. So here with the ID equals 1, if we just right there put the semicolon and then these two dashes, those dashes are like in a script where you put a comma. So anything after this is going to say comma, or comment, excuse me, I said comma, comment. So it's going to be anything after this is automatically disregarded basically, right? So if we end it right there with just ID equals 0, it stops it, and you can see here, it actually comments out the and privated. So hopefully that makes sense. So what it's saying is, hey, do your query, but we put that semicolon there at the end of the URL, and we said stop right here. Don't ask or don't look for the private. Just give us the information. So therefore, we would end up getting the private information. So what signifies the end of a SQL query, and that's the semicolon. Let's see. Okay, so this is the first one. We're going to start doing these. All right, so this is level 1. There's 5 levels on this, I believe, and this is in-band SQL injection. So what that means by in-band is you're right here, you're doing it all from here, and you can see it as you're doing it. So what that means is you're using the website to attack the website. Basically, it's in-band. It's all doing the same application. So there's in-band, there's error, and there's union-based. So in-band, like I said, it's just you're using it here. It says right here, just refers to the method of communicating. You're using the same communication that it's already using. Error-based is when you're using the actual error codes to gather information. And then union-based is what we were talking about earlier, where we're going to actually try and grab other tables in the database based on the union. So here's the practical. Here's level 1. The first thing we need to do is return data to the browser without displaying an error message. Okay, perfect. So it's going to tell us here, try setting the mock browser ID parameters. So they're saying try and set the browser ID right here. So union, if you guys remember, and this is where you may need to know SQL a little bit, but I can at least explain the concepts to you guys, right? So here we're getting an error. It says the used select statements have a different number of columns. So what it is we're trying to grab our ID from the table that they've already specified in their code, and then we're saying union select, and we're saying grab these other ones too, but it's saying the columns don't match up. There's more columns in this ID field than there are in this table that we're looking for. So perfect. What are we going to do? We're going to say, okay, well, we want 2 columns then. And we hit it. Oh, they're saying, nope, there's more than that. It's not adding up. So we hit 3. And look, so we actually didn't get an error. What that means to us is right there that there's 3 columns and there's 3 columns over here. So that's information already. But at the same time, it means that the SQL injection was successful. So that means we can actually insert whatever code we want if we know how to do it. So that's the important thing, is testing it to see if it even will work, if you can even get the injection. All right, so now it's saying change it to 0, and we'll change the ID to 0, so we don't want it to be article ID 1. And you can see here, there is no actual 0 article ID, so it didn't display anything, but it did display the column 2 and 3, which is good to know. And there's the article ID 1. So it actually did display the information. There's just no article that it didn't pull any information from an article named 0. All right, so now we'll show here if we want to, instead of asking for column number 3, we're going to ask for database. And we're going to hit enter. And there's the name of the database. Now, this is very similar to if you were on a SQL server and you were typing in the SQL code that way. These are the commands you would use. So this is just showing that we can use them by running them all on a line, in a sense, right? So SQL 1, or SQL I1, excuse me, for SQL Injection 1, is the actual database name that we're looking for, the one that we're using union to grab. So now we have the name, perfect. So now this command gets a little wonky, but I'll show you, or I'll explain it to you. So we've got the union select, we've got the 1, 2, we got to keep that 1, 2 so that the amount of columns line up. So now we're going to say group underscore concate. So what this is, or concat, however you want to say it, but it stands for concatenate or something like that. I can't pronounce it, I never can, but basically what it stands for is getting all the information together. That's what it's layman's terms, right? So what this is going to do is it's going to take you don't have to do the concat. What it's going to do is it's going to take the information and put it together for you in a format that is easier to read. That's all it is. It's just easier to read. I wish sometimes they wouldn't do that on these because it makes it seem more difficult than it is, but it's not. So now we're saying, okay, we want to put the information together from information schema.tables. So what this is this is something that in SQL everybody has access to, and it's just a table basically that holds the information for the schemas and the tables in SQL. So what that means is we can actually access this and get information from the database. So what this is, and hopefully that made sense to you guys, basically this is just a way for you to run commands and get information about a table. Let's say you just became an admin for a new SQL server and you don't know what's going on with it. You don't know anything about it. Well, you could run these commands with information schema tables and information schema columns, basically just the information schema, and it holds that information to give you the basics about the database, so that way you know what's going on. So we're going to ask it, give us information about the table SQL1 that we just discovered, basically, or SQL I1. Okay, so there we go. So you can see the tables that are in SQL I1 are article and staff users. Okay, so staff users is obviously one we're going to be pretty interested in, right? Okay, perfect. So now we're going to keep the same thing, but we're going to change this table name to column. We want this to now be the columns because we got the tables. Keep in mind, it's easier if you understand how a SQL database is structured. So you need to know the tables and the columns. So now, and then here we'll change this to basically where you put tables, you're going to change it to, I've said cables, columns. And then you're going to say where table schema equals or table name, excuse me, because we're not in the schema anymore. We know the name of the table, and we know it is staff users. Staff underscore users. All right. And then you can see in that staff users table, we actually have ID. If you remember, we had those columns up top, ID, username, and password. So now we need to get the username and the password, right? That's what we want from everything. Now, usually, just so you know, one way to prevent this is you would lock this down. You wouldn't have the username and password database open to where someone could just grab the information. But sometimes admins do make mistakes. All right, so first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to get rid of this to make it easy. All right, we got the group concat. We're going to say username because we know that information now. And then we're going to say, so this little thing, see like this, they make this more complex than they need to. This with that in there, all it's going to do, and I'll show you here in a second, is it's actually going to put that in between the username and password just so that you guys can read it better. But you don't need that, okay? And if you did it without it, you would still be able to read it just fine. And then same thing with this. They're just saying put a break in between each one so that way it's easier to read, but it also makes the command look really complex to you guys when it's not. It's super easy. All right, so staff, users. So what this is saying, and you can see it on the left here, is we're going to select the same, we're doing the union, excuse me, so that union is saying run your regular command, but also give me this. Select, we're going to concat the groups, which is just putting them together. We want the username and the password from staff users, which is the table we just found out existed. So we hit the enter. Boom. So now we have and you can see this is all they did with the different separator, the break, the little semicolon here. They just put it in this nice little format for you. It wouldn't matter. Let's try and take it out and see. I haven't tried this on here, but let's just take it out and see what happens if we don't want that, right? Let's say we don't want it. We don't want the separator either. We just want username, password. And you can see we still get it. Admin, password, Martin, password, Jim work 123 password. So we still get it. It's still the same thing, but you can see they put it in that nice little format for you. So now it's saying what is the user Martin's password, and it's PA money word. And we got to hit it there. Okay, so there's our flag, THM. And I'm trying to make this fast, guys. I know it's there's a lot, but the last one, you guys are going to have to do a lot of trial and error for yourselves because it would just take us forever because it has you test everything. And I'll show you what I mean by that. All right, so now we've got Authentication Bypass. So this is blind SQL. So what that means, it's just like all the other blind injections we did. You're just not going to get direct feedback back. So like if we typed in a SQL injection here, you're not going to get a direct error message or whatever like we did last time. So what this is, and this is something that doesn't exist, or it does exist, excuse me, it's not common anymore. This used to be super common. So what you could do is put this comma, and right here they got this neat little where it's showing you what the query is going to look like on the backend server. So we're going to put a parenthesis space, and we're going to say or, we're going to say 1 equals 1, and we're going to say semicolon dash dash. Now, what that's doing is it's actually saying, right here, we're saying do your regular request, which is the username and password that, does it match? Does Bob's password match this? That's what it's going to ask initially. And we're saying, or does 1 equal 1? So what all we're doing is we're forcing that to equal yes. It's a Boolean 1 or 0. It's just saying yes. When it says yes, it just lets us in because it just says, it's just saying or yes. So all this is the login form's looking for is, do these match? And even if they don't, we're saying or does 1 equal 1? And 1 obviously equals 1, so therefore, yes. There we go. So it says you bypass the login. Boom. Let's go to level 3. And that's something that is used to be really common. And nowadays, if you try to type that into a login, typically they would have that automatically filtered out. But you never know. But it's just a way to show you that you can bypass the authentication if you can get it to take your SQL. Okay, so now it's talking about Boolean based again. This one's a little bit different. So this one's saying here by error messages, if you can get this where it's showing true or false. So let's say username equals admin. Let's put admin123. So this is saying username equals admin. It's just telling us that username exists. Okay, so if we hit username admin123, okay, false. It doesn't exist. That one does not exist. Okay, perfect. So what we can do is we can say, okay, username. So we keep it at false because we're trying to see if something's true. So we keep it at false, and we say union select 1. And what this is and then we comment it out. Keep that in mind because we don't want it to run anything at the after what we do. And it still says false. Okay, so that means to us, the columns don't match up because all the information we're getting is true and false. That's all we're going to get here. That's why it's called a Boolean injection or Boolean-based blind injection, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, the point is we're only going to get true and false. So we just have to keep trying until we get a true. So let's try a 2. Okay, we got a false there. Let's try a 3. True. So we know the columns now match up. We know it's 3 columns. And we need that to equal out so that way anything we run after that is true. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. But basically, if these columns don't match up, you're just going to get an error from SQL. So that's why we have to keep adding those columns just to get them to match so SQL will run it correctly. Okay, so now you can see here, we're going to do the same thing we just did. We're going to say, okay, we've got the 1, 2, 3, the columns to match up. So now we're going to say where the database, and this is where we get a little bit tricky, right? So we're going to say where database. So we're trying to get the name of the database is all we're trying to do. And I'm not going to run through all of these with you guys. I'm just going to run through the first one. And we're going to say where the database is equal to this, which is the %, which is automatically, as we know, a wildcard. So it should say where database is equal to anything is what it's basically saying. And it's saying false, okay? So what that's saying, oh, it actually shows us that we have an error here. And what that's showing me, all right, well, oh, I didn't put like in there. So see, that's perfect. So what we're saying is, does the database, so like is almost like a, does it contain, right? Is this in anywhere in the database name? And the % is a wildcard, so it should be true. So it's true. Now, let's say we go to, does the database start with an A? Nope. Okay. Does it start with a B? Nope. Okay. C? Nope. D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, element, oh, I forgot O, Q, R, S, whoops, R, S. There it is, true. So it starts with an S, right? Now, I'm not just going to go through and try all these, but that's what you do. So now we got an S, right? So now we go A again. But I already know it starts with, it's SQL I. And you notice it stays true, right? Let's say I change that I to O, false. So as long as it's true, it's going to keep giving it to you that it's true. So SQLi. Now we know, and it tells you here that it's SQL 3, right? So then we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to say, okay, so with SQL 3, we've got the name. So then we're going to go and we're going to actually do the next command, which is where the database, whoops, we know the database name. We don't need to do this like anymore. So we're going to say from information, and we're going to do that same information schema, but we're going to try and get the table information, .tables, where table underscore schema is equal to, because we know it now, SQL I 3. And we know that because we just found it. And table underscore name, and then we got to do it again. So we got to say like %, but we need to get the whole thing. So we need to find out, and we can see right there, it's the next one is, so A, false, you know. So if we go to U, and it's users, we can try it all out, and we get the true every time. So then we know we have that one. And you're going to basically keep these commands and go down until you get all the information you need. So this is trial and error, meaning you're going to have to try all kinds of different things and get these true or falses until you get all the information you need to where you can run this command and you get all the information. So now we've got all the information. Let's pretend we did it because we don't have time. So we're going to say union. Oh, well, we already got the union select, excuse me. We're going to say from users, because we know that users table exists, where username is like, and we could do the A, which we know it's going to be admin. I can tell you that right now, where it's admin. So now we're going to say where username equals admin. And we'll get that. So we know the username equals admin. Boom. And now we got to figure out the password. So we'll say and password like a % there. And what we need, okay, we got false. So we need to get the password. And I can't remember if the password is, oh, it actually says it here. It's 3845. So if we type, oh, I messed up there. All right, so there you can see it's 3. If we type 5, doesn't work. 3, 8, true, 4, 5, true. So we can type in here, admin 3845, login. All right, and now we're back, so we're at 30 minutes. This is why I'm trying to complete these fast for you guys, because I'm trying not to make you guys sit through this forever, because it's the same thing over and over. You guys just have to understand the concept. So the concept of the true false or the Boolean is you make the SQL statement, and if it comes back, you make it false, right? So then if it comes back true, you know it actually executed correctly. That's the same thing we're going to do with this next one, except for this next one, we're going to say is totally blind, and you're not even getting those true false statements, right? So when that happens, what do we do, right? So when that happens, we're going to actually use the other ones the same way, but what we're doing is we're going to set this refer to admin 123 again, okay? And then we're going to say union select, just like we always do, and we're going to say sleep, okay? So what this is we're going to just try and get it to give us some information. So when it executes correctly, it's going to actually sleep first. So if we hit enter, watch, look at that request time, okay? So see it says 0.003. So it didn't take, or it took basically no time, which is not what we want. So now let's add another column and see if we can match the columns up. Okay, and you see that now, instead of the request time taking 0.003 seconds, it took 5 seconds, which is, we set it to sleep for 5 seconds. So you can tell here, this is as far as I'm going to take you guys on this part, but you can tell here it says union select 5, and then it's saying where, and this is the command it wants you to try and walk through, where database, and we're trying to figure out the database name again, is like, and we're going to say and they have us on U, but I know it's not U, so we'll go to there to A, and we'll hit enter and see if we get a, okay, we only got 0.1 seconds, so that means it's not that one. Okay, we got B, 0.1 seconds, C, 0.1 seconds. I hit S there, and look, S takes 5 seconds. Okay, so I already know this, the schema is the same as this SQL I4. So if we hit that, look how long it takes. It takes 5 seconds, right? Once we get that SQL I4, which we have there, we can actually get, say, where database. We can keep this here. We can say where database equals SQL I4. Whoops. And then we can say, and then we can go back here to the Boolean base and just follow exactly pretty much what we did, which is where database, oh, we're going to grab the information from the schema tables, where the table schema equals SQL I3, then table name, so on, so forth. We can follow this exact same thing because it's the exact same thing, except for one gives you time delay, one gives you a yes, no. So it's the exact same thing, and I've already done this. So I'm going to, basically what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put the name and the password in for you. So it's admin and the password. I already did this for you guys because this would take forever to do on this video, because I'd have to try every single character the whole time, and I'd have to do it with you guys sitting here watching me just try A, B, C, D, E, F. And if you follow the blind SQL injection, it's the same for both methods. One just takes 5 seconds, and that's your yes. The other one says true, that's your yes, okay? So now we have THM, SQL injection, injection master. All right, there it is, guys. That's pretty much it. Now we're going to talk about out of band SQL. This is pretty much over. The actual practical is over. But what we're going to talk about real quick is out of band. So this is why I was trying to speed this up. I want you guys to be able to do this yourself. This is something that is really neat to see done correctly, and they do a good job of teaching it here. You just got to read it and actually take the time. So out of band, the only difference is you're actually routing it from the database to you. So this kind of gives you a little bit of information on how that's done. So an attacker will make a request to the site, right, with their injection payload. So they're going to do it just like they did, but they're going to inject a payload. When that happens, the website will make the SQL query to the database, which also sends the payload to the database, right? And when that payload hits the database, it actually contains a request which forces it to send HTTP info, because as anyone knows, firewalls typically allow HTTP traffic out almost by default because of the fact that people use the internet so much. You can't block it, right? Unless you have a closed network. So with that said, what it's saying here is it's asking name a protocol with a D that can be used to exfiltrate data, and that's DNS, because you can use that in the SQL query and you can see here, you could be monitoring HTTP or DNS requests, and that's how you could make your payload send data out. And if you're monitoring for it, you'll get the information. Now, remediation, how do you fix this, right? This is some of the ways they do it. Prepared statements. So what this is it says in a prepared query, the first thing a developer writes is the SQL query, and then any user inputs are added as parameters afterwards. So what it does, it stops you from appending the SQL query like we did, where we said union on it, like we added that union statement to it, right? So it stops you from adding to the SQL query. It ends it, says this is a closed query. We can take your input and we can use it in the query, but you can't add to the query, okay? So input validation, simple. You just ensure that what you think they're going to type is what they're typing. So let's say you don't want equal signs and stuff in a username. You can input validate. You can say only you can put string characters like A, B, C, D, whatever, and numbers. Therefore, we couldn't put equals. We couldn't put apostrophes and stuff that we need to run the SQL statements. Escaping user input. What this is using those apostrophes, quotations, money signs, backslashes, that stuff. What it's saying is they're going to put a backslash in front of these so that when you put them in there, it reads them as strings, not as actual commands. So that's all it is. It's just ways to validate it. It says here, name a method of protecting yourself from a SQL injection exploit. And I'm not sure if they're looking for a specific one. And nope, that's not it. Name a method of protecting yourself. I'm not really sure what they're asking. I haven't looked at this. It starts with a P, prepared statement. So they're just wanting one of these, I guess. That was a weird one because they just want one of the four, I guess. But that's the room, guys. This one, it's a long video. That's why I was trying to hurry up and bust through it. But hopefully you guys understand the actual methodology. That's all I care about. I don't care that you know SQL because you can learn SQL, right? You can spend the next month learning SQL if you want. But if you don't understand the methodology of how a hacker tries to break it, how it tries to get in, then it doesn't matter as far as if you're trying to be a hacker, right? So you want to understand what they're trying to do, and what they are doing is if they can get any response that says yes, no, or if they can get any way to reach out to other tables or other databases, then they've already got you because they can start traversing your net or your databases and pulling data out or just validating data. If you really had the time, right, with the ABCD method, with testing the true-false method, if I really had just months of access to your database, I could get all the information out of your database. Now, you might have hundreds of usernames and passwords in there, and it might take me months to sit there and go A, B, C to get your usernames and passwords, but I can do it, right? That's the risk because you can automate tools that will actually do this stuff for you, and that's what the risk is involved. So keep that, guys, in mind. This is the manual method that you should understand, and there are tools that will do some of this for you, but you guys need to understand what's happening on the back end. So if you guys like it, hopefully you do. This was a very long video. I was trying to hurry up. Subscribe if you like it. Hit that like button, guys. You guys have been killing it. We've reached 100 subs. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to try and get that 100 sub video up within the next day or so. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.